Good morning. My name is Yasmeen Elagha. I am a practicing attorney, although I almost wasn't. On the heels of my graduation from Northwestern School of Law, I was defamed, fired, essentially excommunicated from the field I worked my entire life to enter. And it is precisely because I am Palestinian and a Palestinian from Gaza who exercised her right to free speech. I'm originally from a city called Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. My family has been in Khan Yunis for over 500 years, and we are one of the largest families in Gaza. My grandmother's home in Khan Yunis was housed inside a centuries-old Ottoman palace called Al-Qal'a. When I first visited Gaza as a child, I was introduced to generations of new family members, loving souls who playfully chased my siblings and I around the maze of the palace. When we grew tired of hide and seek in the sprawling compound, we quenched our thirst with fresh fruit juice from the local bakery and devoured clementines and persimmons from the fruit stands that lined the bustling streets. This is the beautiful Gaza that I know, one that laughs, plays, and brings color to life. This, like the rest of Khan Yunis, is all reduced to rubble. Over the past 2 years, I have watched my family members be picked off one by one under the torrential downpour of Israeli bombardment. Over 200 of my family members were killed. Some were elderly, many were mothers and fathers. About 50 were children, the youngest of whom was only a few months old. In the weeks leading up to their senseless deaths, they suffered immensely. Hundreds of my family members were displaced, sleeping on pieces of cardboard in the cold streets, taking refuge in hospitals that were bombed and schools that were nevertheless targeted by Israeli airstrikes, leaving them begging for their lives. My 81-year-old relative, Jawdat al-Agha, was one of those displaced. They found his body curled in on itself, looking for any morsel of warmth, but frozen to death. A few months later, 2 of my elderly relatives found their neighborhood flooded with Israeli forces. To venture out for food was to sign their own death sentence. They put out a desperate plea for food as they starved while trapped in their home. We have not heard from them since and can only assume the worst. Those who did venture out for food faced a similar fate. 2 of my mother's cousins left their home to search for desperately needed food. They came back to discover that Israel had destroyed their home in an airstrike, killing their mother, father, and sister. As the surviving brothers desperately dug through the rubble by hand to find any body part of their loved ones to bury, another Israeli airstrike dropped on their home, killing them both. The only surviving member is one sister outside of Gaza, who never had the chance to dignify her family with a burial. She is orphaned of her mother and father, forever deprived of her siblings, shuttered from any opportunity to bid farewell to the entire family that Israel ripped away from her and left utterly alone in the world. This is not an exceptional circumstance. This is the double taps that we hear about in the news that target humanitarians, aid workers, doctors, journalists. This is a matter of state policy. Yasser and Ru'a al-Agha were 2 other siblings, aged 6 and 14, who were also killed by Israel. Their area was so flooded with Israeli forces that their family could not reach their children's dead bodies until 1 month after Israel killed them. Ru'a and Yasser's bodies were so decomposed that their eyeballs were decayed and emptied from their sockets. This is the lasting memory that their little brother, who screamed at the gory sight of his dead siblings, has of them. The elderly in my family have not been spared. The children in my family have not been spared. And the mentally disabled in my family, similarly, have not been spared. My uncle Man has a severe mental disability that leaves him dependent on medication to function. The blockade on entry of aid into Gaza included this medication. After running out of it early after the Israeli violence began, he experienced severe withdrawal symptoms. When my aunt Samar went out in search of his medication, she was shot at by Israeli tanks and witnessed others in the street killed in front of her. Ma'an was later taken hostage by Israeli forces, who also took my American cousins, 19-year-old Burak and 20-year-old Hashim, and their Canadian father, Ahmed. Before dawn on February 8, 2024, Israeli forces broke down the door of their home as they were sleeping, tied up the women and children, threw them against a wall, beat my 12-year-old cousin bloody, and took the men of the family hostage. Ma'an was returned after 50 days by being thrown across the border. Israeli forces so brutally tortured him that he suffered a stroke that left him unable to speak. He had sores in his mouth from dehydration. He was missing chunks of flesh all over both arms so that his muscles and bones were visible. His wrists were shredded from the handcuffs. He still did not have his medication. He was in agony every day. We found out that Hashim and Burak, our two American cousins, who are still being held hostage by Israel, are also being severely tortured. The U.S. Embassy lied to us and said that the boys were getting, quote, slapped here and there, as if that was acceptable. But we discovered that Burak was so badly beaten that the Israeli prison authority broke a metal chair over his back. He has been deprived of medical attention and continues to be deprived, despite having broken ribs poking out of place. The U.S. government has forsaken them, fully abandoning its citizen hostages and abandoning any attempt to get them the help they need and secure their release. We heard much about the Israeli hostages, but never the Palestinian ones, and mine are American too. While one set of people is personalized, humanized, their experience platformed in detail, we are reduced to statistics, barely mentioned. Despite the enormity of our numbers in tens of thousands of hostages, feelings of fear are made equivalent to the decimation of our families. Hashim and Burak's mother suffers every day in agony, wondering if death is better for her sons than torture. But even in our deaths, Israel does not allow us dignity, and it does not allow us to know peace. In January 2024, Israeli forces raided one of my family's graveyards, where generations of hundreds of my family members laid to rest. The Israelis desecrated their graves, destroyed the field, and stole my family members' corpses. Among those bodies was Ammi Wadia, who was the leading elder of the family. The leading elder is incredibly well respected within the family and across the whole of the Gaza Strip. The Israelis stole his body as a personal blow to the spirits of my family, as a final assault on our dignity and of those who we honored in death. This assault follows us even here in our home of Illinois, where we witnessed the murder of 6-year-old Wadia al-Fayoumi, an American Palestinian child who was killed for nothing more than who he was, right here in our backyard. And yet, our state punishes us and retaliates against companies that refuse such horror, that reject the murder of children. In effect, our state, the home where I grew up, glorifies and validates the machinery of oppression that devastated and crippled me and generations of my family. Where we have screamed in horror at the decaying flesh of our loved ones, where we have cried in despair over the tender children ripped away from us, where we have begged for mercy and a morsel of food. We are challenged with the Zionist perspective that our pleas for our lives are somehow dwarfed by the hurt feelings of those who hear our desperate pleas. How can it be a harm to oppose the destruction of my family's home? How can it be a harm to ask that babies in my family not be deprived of food? How can it be a harm to appeal for dignity in death? It is not a harm, but an erasure. It is a brazen retaliation by this state for seeking justice, an unashamed statement by Illinois that Palestinian lives do not matter, that our visceral pain at the tangible loss of life is insignificant, that we are easily wiped away. Illinois is an active participant in that cruel, dehumanizing erasure. Even this very committee, the fact that we are relegated to a subject matter hearing regarding this bill instead of voting on this bill is erasure. This bill was refused the normal process of a vote that all other bills undergo. We asked for this bill to go for a vote, as all other bills do, even if that were a vote against. That was denied. And that in itself is erasure. My heart breaks at the casual indignity that we are all forced to suffer as retaliation. I have visited Gaza, but I was born and raised in Illinois. It is everything I know. It is where I have manifested a life, and it is where I have always planned to continue to be. But with the current law in place, I am made small, stifled, suffocated, and discarded. I am stripped of rights other citizens of this state and this country are naturally afforded just as a function of the skin I live in. The seal of the state of Illinois bears the motto, quote, state sovereignty, national union. Sovereignty, by definition, is the authority of a state to make laws and govern itself without external interference. And yet, the current law places limitations on the fundamental constitutional right to free speech at the behest of Israel by a board that, as Representative Rashid stated, announced its interests as, quote, preserving Israeli sovereignty. Illinois cannot be said to be truly sovereign when it undermines a fundamental constitutional right by a law devised to preserve the sovereignty of a foreign entity. To live up to its own motto, Illinois must pass Bill 2723, repeal the law that creates an exception to free speech, and restore faith in its true sovereignty and interest in dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony.